Hi everyone, this is Praying Medic, and this is my news update for Saturday, June 9th. Thank you for joining me. Let me see where I should start. Let's go back a ways. Uh, let's see. Interesting news story coming out of both Cuba and China. Over the last year or two, our State Department has had to remove people from the Chinese embassy, or I'm sorry, the Cuban embassy, because they've displayed symptoms that have been very strange and hard to explain, and ringing in the ears, severe headaches, nausea, and some people have suggested that they may be the victim of essentially ultrasonic, some kind of an ultrasonic weapon. So we've removed people from the Cuban embassy over the last couple of years, and a couple of days ago we removed two more people from Cuba and two people from China who have had the same symptoms. And whether or not this is due to some kind of sonic weapon, I don't know. They're looking into it, but there's some strange things going on uh, in those embassies. I don't know exactly why this is going on, but it's a thing, and I want to make you aware of that. Another thing I want to make you aware of is there is increasing. I think in the next couple of weeks we're going to see increasing uh, visibility of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and Seth Rich in the news stories. And I say that because, look, Q has reminded us, and Q has not posted since June 2nd, which is fine. There's a lot going on. Q has reminded us that it's very likely that the Seth Rich story is going to come back on the front burner in June for a couple of reasons. Number one is the Democratic National Committee, DNC, they have a lawsuit out against President Trump, the campaign, and named as co-defendants in that lawsuit are Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and a bunch of other people who are accused of creating a conspiracy to defraud the Democrats, to overthrow the election. Actually, Russia is named in that lawsuit as well. And when that lawsuit goes into the discovery phase and evidence is brought out and presented, one of the things they'll have to do is they'll have to either get Julian Assange and WikiLeaks to testify or get depositions from them. And so one of the questions they'll have to ask is of Julian Assange is, where did you get the emails from that were taken from the DNC? And at that point, even though WikiLeaks has never divulged their sources, in a court of law, if they're asked to give their sources, they really can't lie. So we may find out from Assange if Seth Rich was in fact the source of his emails. All of that is going to be coming back around on the front burner. There's another lawsuit out right now. Seth Rich's brother has sued WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. I think Matt Crouch is named in the lawsuit as defendants. Twitter has subpoenaed the direct messages of all of those people as part of the court proceedings. And again, there's this lawsuit, and now WikiLeaks and Assange are going to be asked to testify, give depositions. So if you're interested in Seth Rich, and if you're interested in Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and what's going on, all of that is going to be coming to a head here in the next month or so, possibly. I don't know. I've been looking to see if I can find a court date on any of that. Haven't found court dates, but it's something we can look forward to in the not too distant future. Let's see if what else I can show you here is news real quick. Just scrolling through my news timeline. Homeland Security Committee Chair Ron Johnson has asked for Obama-era communications with Homeland Security. That would have been Jay Johnson. He was the head of Homeland Security at the time. And Obama and Comey and Loretta Lynch, he's asking for communications that they had around the time of the beginning of the Russia investigation. This is interesting because Homeland Security is one of about 4 committees now that are kind of hard on the trail in pursuing the origination of the Russia investigation. The House Intelligence Committee is pursuing it. The House Judiciary is pursuing it. And Homeland Security is also pursuing it. So this issue is being investigated from a number of different angles. And I expect we'll be hearing news on that next week. The DOJ Inspector General's report is due out. Let's see, it would be, I think, well, it's the 14th. I don't know if it's next Thursday, but it's President Trump's birthday. So the Inspector General's report is due out on the 14th. I do not think it's going to be redacted. That is one question a lot of people have had. I've been looking at Inspector General reports over the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. There was a recent Inspector General report from the DOD Inspector General. There was one from Homeland Security Inspector General. When a congressional committee or the Department of Justice or somebody turns over text messages or documents that are classified in nature, if they are declassified and there's information in there that can't be made public, that information is redacted. What we're going to see with the Inspector General's report is not redacted documents. There were over 1.2 million documents used to create the Inspector General's report. The report itself shouldn't have any redactions in it. It's a report. It's a findings of fact. It'll explain the basis of the investigation. This is primarily has to do with the Hillary Clinton email server investigation. I do not expect, and you'll see any redactions in that report. If there are any, I would be surprised. It's just a straightforward report. The scope of the investigation, what they found, what they investigated, what their recommendations are for Department of Justice and FBI. They could make criminal referrals. They will definitely make some institutional recommendations as far as policy and procedure. So those are the kind of things we'll probably see in the Inspector General's report next week. Let's see, moving along. A lot of this isn't all that interesting. Oh, Iran. All right, this is going to segue into one of the things I want to talk about on a long term. So yesterday, Iran, in a, honey, you were reading that story this morning. An Iranian official was reading a report, and basically in front of the Iranian press, they admitted their part in the 9/11 terror attacks, that they facilitated the movement of terrorists through Iran and into the United States so they could fly the planes into the buildings. It is very curious that Iran made that admission yesterday. This is on June 8th. I'm going to go on to some other things, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. Let me see. Department of Justice has asked a Texas district court to invalidate more Obamacare regulations. DOJ seems to be chipping away at Obamacare. They haven't been able to get Congress to completely dismantle the whole thing, so they're taking it apart piece by piece. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is kind of in the headlines again. Look, if you are sick and tired of waiting for this Awan scandal to be prosecuted, look, I get your frustration. There have been, I think, 5 delays in the hearings involving the Awans and the server and the congressional scandal. It's my belief that the prosecution is being delayed for a purpose. Now, you can disagree with me, and I may be wrong, but I believe the prosecution is being delayed to bring it as close to the midterm elections as possible. It is my hope that when the Awan scandal goes to court and is actually prosecuted, that all of the Democrat representatives who hired the Awans will end up being held to account. Some of them may end up being prosecuted. This thing is not going away. The fact that the president is tweeting about it in the last couple of days tells you this is not going away. The president is signaling to us the issues that are coming to the forefront, that are coming on the front burner. What he's been tweeting about the Awans, tweeting about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. When he's tweeting, okay, look, to the casual observer, it looks like he's frustrated with Jeff Sessions and the Department of Justice and the fact that they're not doing anything. I've got some news for you. Jeff Sessions and the DOJ are all over this. And Trump is playing a game. He is trolling the media. Trump knows the media has orders. They are not supposed to write about this story. The media doesn't want to touch it. They don't want to get near it. Trump knows it. That is why Trump is tweeting about it. He is trolling the media, trying to force them to write a story about the Awan brothers and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the server scandal. Because as this thing moves forward, now the next court date is July 3rd. Awan is asking for a plea deal. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is asking for a plea deal. And you know, we've talked about this before. I don't think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is going to get a deal. I don't think it's going to happen. But we have, you know, about 3 weeks, and we'll see what happens with that. But it's moving closer and closer to the midterms. And if this goes away, I think it's going to blow up in the Democrats' faces. It is going to cause devastation that they will not be able to recover from. And I think that is the intent of delaying this and dragging it out, is to get it closer to the midterms so that when people go to the polls, fresh in their mind is this big scandal, along with all the other scandals that are coming out. And the OIG report's coming out next week. So it is going to be one thing after another. Let's see. Jury found a former CIA officer guilty of providing classified information to a Chinese intelligence agent. It's been very interesting what's going on with China and the espionage issue that we've seen. You know, Q has been posting these things about the phone makers ZTE and Apple, and we've learned over the last month or so that there are some very sketchy things going on with these phone companies, phone makers, that where it sounds like they're putting in backdoor software that allows them to spy on American citizens. Fox News published an article about a month ago where the Department of Defense banned all ZTE phones from DoD personnel because of security concerns. I think they figured out that ZTE had a backdoor into those phones, and they were spying on our people in our military. So, you know, people in the mainstream media are creating this hysteria about Russia being a danger to the American way of life. Actually, you could make a case that China is probably as dangerous or more dangerous to the American way of life than Russia is right now. Russia and China both do cyber espionage, but China has been much more, I think, aggressive about it, at least in the last year or two. So we've seen a number of CIA agents arrested for trying to pass intelligence on to China. Let's see. So President Trump disinvited the Golden State Warriors from the White House after Steph Curry got on there and was running his mouth about not wanting to come to the White House. So Trump said, look, if you don't want to come here, you don't have to come here. Stay home. The sports teams I think, that are taking a line against patriotism are making a big mistake. NFL has paid dearly for that mistake, and the NBA is following suit. They haven't learned. NASCAR has, I think the National Hockey League has learned, but a lot of these people are not learning. I just saw this headline last night. I think it's a Bloomberg article. Germany wants to create government-funded feminist pornography. No joke. Bloomberg article. I put that up on my Twitter line headline. All right, that brings us to the G7 summit. So the president went to Canada yesterday, hung out with Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron, Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. And I'm from the age where Pierre Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada. So for me to see this young kid in there, Trudeau in office, is still a bit strange for me. My Canadian friends are telling me he won't be around for long. So Trump goes to the G7 summit, and I have heard from people who said that Trump didn't actually want to go to the G7 summit, that he thought it was kind of a lost cause, there wasn't any purpose in going, that it was bad timing. Look, Trump is trying to undo the horrible trade practices of the last 20, 25 years. Obama and the Bushes really did not help us at all. They allowed other nations to take advantage of us in a big way. Trump knows it. He's trying to undo all that. And he is putting up, he's erecting barriers, trade barriers and tariffs as a way to signal to other nations, you're not going to screw around with us anymore. There is a new sheriff in town, and I am not going to allow you to take advantage of us anymore. And, you know, understandably, Shinzo Abe and Merkel and Macron and Trudeau, they don't like that. They've been used to getting their way. And now Trump is taking a different tack, and they don't like it. So this whole G7 meeting was very poorly timed for Trump. Trump is using economic leverage and economic pressure to remove the trade deficits that we've had with most of these countries for years. So the G7 meeting only created this meeting where everyone who has an issue with Trump is there all at once. And Trump didn't take part of in the global warming meeting yesterday afternoon. He stuck around this morning, had some discussions with leaders, and he is now on Air Force One on his way to North Korea. All right. The thing I want to bring your attention to, speaking of North Korea, is yesterday, as he's going into the G7 summit, Trump mentions the idea that he thinks Russia should join the G7. It would actually be the G8 if they added Russia. And of course, I think it was Susan Rice jumped on Twitter and started screaming and hollering about who's writing this script. What an idiotic idea. Who would want Russia to be in the G7? Well, okay. So all the people from the Obama administration and the mainstream media are still spinning this Russia phobia thing. We can't trust Russia. We have to fear Russia. Russia wants to destroy us. This is still that narrative that was left over from Obama and Hillary. And Hillary was spinning that narrative because her job was to get us into a war with Russia. That was Hillary's job. She was supposed to be elected. They were going to allow Iran and North Korea to get nuclear weapons. And then we were going to have a nuclear war. And they were going to, it was basically going to be a war between the United States and Russia, with Iran as probably a proxy, and or North Korea. Wipe out our countries, and then the United Nations could come in, dissolve international borders, we have a global government. That was the plan. Trump came in and screwed that up because he defeated Hillary. But in the back of their minds, they still have this agenda that they want to provoke a war between Russia and the United States. That's their agenda. Now, Trump, during the campaign, was trying to tell people what would be so bad if we got along with Russia. Why do people feel that we have to be at war with Russia? Why can't we get along with them? And, you know, in the intervening 2 years, there's been a lot of water under the bridge. And Trump is now trying to get the world leaders to look at Russia with some different eyes. And he's trying to get Americans to look at Russia with some different eyes. And I'll tell you where this is going. All right. So Q has told us, been telling us since March, that Iran is next. Okay. Trump and his people were able to remove the CIA influence in North Korea, cut the strings of control, and at that point, Kim Jong-un was able to make smart decisions, and that is why Kim Jong-un is going to be meeting with Trump in Singapore over the next few days, because they were able to get rid of the corruption and the control of the CIA. Now, Q has told us Iran is next. All right, I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I want to look briefly at how Trump was able to get Kim Jong-un to volunteer to denuclearize North Korea and come to the peace table. And he did it through China. Trump understood the weakness of China's economy. And really their weakness is raw materials. China does not have the infrastructure to mine and manufacture raw materials. They import most of what they go through production-wise. They're not able to really mine a whole lot of, you know, aluminum, steel. They have to import raw materials into their country, fabricate goods, and then export them. Trump knows that, and that's why the steel and the aluminum tariffs are so damaging to China, because they're heavily dependent on bringing in steel and aluminum and other things into their country for manufacturing. So Trump has been applying economic pressure on China for the last year, and his goal was not just to level the playing field with China and the United States, but his secondary goal was to get President Xi to negotiate peace with Kim Jong-un. So North Korea is a satellite of China, and whatever Kim Jong-un is beholden to President Xi. Whatever President Xi says, Kim Jong-un pretty much has to do it. Okay, there is a similar relationship between Iran and Russia. The Iranian leaders are in a large part under the control of Vladimir Putin. And the way that Trump is going to get Iran denuclearized into the peace table is by working with Russia. Now, here's what I think we're going to see over the next 3 or 4 months. When Vladimir Putin was accused, and Russia was accused, of poisoning that former KGB agent in London, what happened? Trump put the finger on Putin, said you used that nerve agent to poison that former KGB agent, and all of Europe fell behind Trump. They got behind Trump and they applied economic sanctions to Russia. When you apply economic sanctions as a large bloc of nations on one nation, it hurts that nation's economic output. It's harder for them to do trade, harder for them to do imports and exports. It's just difficult. Trump is a master of using economic trade and sanctions to get what he wants. So whenever Trump is talking about trade, tariffs, embargoes, things of that nature, sanctions, he is talking about his strategy to accomplish what he wants to do. All right. So Russia has been under economic sanctions for a while, but Trump, it wants to ease the sanctions on Russia to make life better for Vladimir Putin. Okay. Russia has a relatively small economy. When you compare to Germany, China, United States, Russia's economy is relatively small. It's heavily dependent on mining and manufacturing. They don't have much of a tech industry. Uh, Vladimir Putin knows dang well Trump can make his life hell if he wants to. So Trump mentioned to the world yesterday, you know, it would be kind of cool if we were able to bring Russia into the fold, if we were allowed to bring Russia into the economic discussions, if we got rid of the sanctions, and if we allowed Russia to have a seat at the table. Trump was signaling to Vladimir Putin, if you cooperate with me and what I want to do, I can make your life easier. I can increase your ability to export and import and make life way better if you work with me. Okay, that message yesterday was a signal to Putin that I want to work with you. And it was a signal to the other nations that Trump is the one who is in control, that Trump is not going to have terms dictated to him. He is in control, and they're going to do it his way, or they're going to be out in the cold. And look, this is a really complex situation. I'm going to explain one more facet. The significance of the United States pulling out of the Iran deal is that Iran was able to do trade with Germany and France and the UK under the Iran deal. Now that the United States has pulled out of the Iran deal, we are going to apply economic sanctions on any country that does trade with Iran. That includes Germany, UK, France, Spain, Italy, anyone. If you do trade with Iran, because we have pulled out of the deal and we have applied economic sanctions, we're going to apply economic sanctions to you. Now here's the problem for Europe. The Iranian leaders have already said that if Europe cancels the trade deals that they've already got in place, the Iranian leaders are going to tell the world how much blackmail money, how much they took in bribes. That Iranian leaders are going to expose the bribery and corruption of the European leaders if they get back out of the trade deals. Okay, so the European leaders are in a pickle. If they don't play ball with Iran, they're exposed and their bribery and corruption is made public. If they stay in the economic trade deals that they made with Iran, they're going to suffer sanctions from the US. So they're in a very difficult spot. Trump has managed to put much of Europe in a very difficult spot economically. And he has the ability to make life very difficult for all of them if he wants to. Trump's goal, his end game, is to denuclearize Iran and have a peace agreement with them and have everyone have fair trade and allow everyone to prosper. But he's going to have to go about this very strategically. And that involves playing Russia and Europe and Iran in this little game where he has to get them to agree to do the right things. They all have their own self-interests, and Trump is trying to lead them into an agreement that is mutually beneficial for everyone. So when I said about 20 minutes ago, Iran suddenly comes out and publicly admits that they were complicit in the 9/11 disaster. Why? Why yesterday? Why yesterday did Iran all of a sudden admit guilt? On the same day, Trump sent an overture to Putin saying, we'd like to have you in the G7. Coincidence? I don't think so. I almost wonder if Putin didn't tell the Iranian leaders, you need to start cooperating with this agenda that we're gonna roll out. And I think we're going, and here's what's going to happen with Iran. So look at what happened with North Korea. North Korea was building missiles, testing missiles developing nuclear technology, right up until the point in November of last year where Trump went and visited Asia. And as soon as Trump met with President Xi in China, that was the end of Kim Jong-un's missile testing program. It was done. There have been no missile tests since last November. So there was aggression, military buildup, weapons testing, right up until the point where Trump struck a deal with China to get North Korea to stop their testing. I would expect the same thing is going to happen with Iran. Iran has already, I think a week ago, said that they have completed an assembly plant that is going to be used to make centrifuges to enrich uranium. You can expect Iran to continue to enrich uranium, to continue working on their weapons program, right up until the point where Trump and Vladimir Putin have a talk, and Trump tells Putin, you are going to be our favorite trading partner, but you have got to get Iran to shut down their nuclear program. Right now, today, it's over. Putin is then going to have to put pressure on Iran to get them to shut it down. I think we're going to see a similar evolution of events with Iran and Russia that we saw with North Korea and China. If you look at what they did there, it's going to be very similar with Iran and Russia. Trump has a formula, a strategy that has worked, and he's going to stick with that formula. And so when you see Trump talking about Russia in the future and talking about giving them a seat at the table, taking away economic sanctions, and taking a hard line with Canada, UK, Germany, and France, it's because he's maneuvering these pieces to get them into alignment where everything will work out the way it needs to work out. So that is my news update for today. I'm gonna let you go. I've got some, yes, honey?
Somebody asked if you have any dreams to share.
Dreams to share. I had a dream about Trump last night, actually. I should tell you about the dream I had last night. So, last night I had a dream about Trump and Pence. This is just a weird dream. So I was listening to them talk, and they used this word I'd never heard of before. It was like a word that doesn't even exist in English. They used this word, and in the dream, that word struck me as being odd, and I made note of it, and I thought, I need to find out what that word means. So I went and researched in this spiritual world dictionary. I started looking up this word, and I found it, and I didn't find a meaning for the word. What I found was the word, when a person said that particular word, it released power. That was the thing about that word. When you said that word, boom, it released energy, power into the world when you use that word. Now, the strange thing about that word was, as I was researching this word, I realized that people like Eric Schmidt and Hillary Clinton had also used the same word in the past. But when they used the word, it released much less energy, less power than when Trump and Pence used it. And that was what I noticed. I looked at how Hillary and Eric Schmidt used that word. The power released was very little because they were using it for evil purposes. But when I looked at Trump and Pence using that word, the power that it released was great. It was a lot of power. So that was the dream I had last night. And look, I have these dreams that are very abstract, and they're sometimes hard, they're just hard to describe. But these dreams are symbolic. What it means, what that dream means, very simply is people like Eric Schmidt and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have used power in the past for evil purposes, and the unwise, unjust use of power does not release the full potential of power. When leaders like Trump and Pence exercise power correctly, the power released is much greater when it's used for good purposes. That's essentially the meaning of the dream. All right, so there you go. That's all I have for you today. I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna get off of here. I hope you have an awesome Saturday. Keep Melania Trump in prayer. Keep the president in prayer. Keep the vice president in prayer. Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, keep them all in prayer. Keep Kim Jong-un in prayer. Keep Russia and Vladimir Putin in prayer. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for sharing us on social media. Yes, baby?
They want to know what the word was.
The word? I don't know what the word was. I would have told you what the word was. I don't know what the word was. It was just this weird word. Like I said, I saw it and I was like, what the heck is that? It's not even a word. It's like this strange sound. All right. There you go. I hope you all have an awesome Saturday. Keep them all in prayer. Love you all. Take care. I will catch you on the next broadcast.